Hey guys, welcome back. This is Chand from studyeasy.org, and in this particular video we will add the DAOs into our project. As if now there is no business logic implemented in this particular project, and with DAOs we will add in the code which would be responsible to communicate with your database. So let's get started. Now, as a programming best practice, it is usually seen that people keep the DAOs into a separate package, and we will also do the same. It is a good practice. So we will firstly create a package, and the name of the package would be org.studyeasy.spring.daos. Alright, let us click on finish. And in this particular package, let us add an interface first. Now friends, when it comes to DAOs, it is recommended to add an interface first and then later implement the interface in the implementer class. The name we will give as app DAO, and we will click on finish. Now friends, imagine that to start with, we would like to get the list of all the users which are there in the database project, right? So first of all, we will add in a method in here which would be a public method. We will return a list of users, so it would be list of user. The name of the method would be list users, and I suppose that's it. Definitely to add the required packages, let us quickly do that. Eclipse is not giving us options. Let us click on this particular option. What's going wrong? It is taking more time than usual. There we go. So we would require to import the list package, and we would also require to import the package responsible for user class. Alright, so everything looks good in here. Alright, so let's move forward and let's add the implementer class. So I will again highlight the package, right click, navigate to new, add in a new class, and the name would be app DAO implementer. Alright, so IMPL is a short form for implementation. Let us click on finish. Oops, I have made a mistake in there. We would like to add the interface as well, but let us do it manually. So I will say implements app DAO. Alright, and now we will also implement the unimplemented methods in here. So let us do that. Alright, so all this code could be directly generated when we have added the class as well. For that, let me show you how we can do that. If we navigate to a new, then select a class, let us give the name as demo. We can also add in the interface directly from here by clicking on this add button and giving the name of this interface. In that case, all the code which we have just now coded would be automatically generated as soon as we generate the class. So here we go. This is automatically generated. So that is one step we have missed. No issues. Let me delete the demo.java file. Alright, so now we have this method list users, and now we would like to add in the code which will definitely interact with the database. But moving forward, whenever we are interacting with the database, we would require a data source. Data source is an entity which contains all the required things which are responsible to connect with the database, like the username, password, then driver name, and all other required stuff. So let us create a private entity, private data source, and the name of the object would be data source. And now friends, how we will get this data source? Definitely we will add in a constructor, and whenever we would be creating an object or a bean of this particular class, we need to inject the data source, or we need to pass in the data source as a constructor argument. So that is something which we're gonna see in the forthcoming videos, how we're gonna do that with reference to XML and with reference to annotation. So don't worry, let us navigate to source and we will generate a constructor using field real quick. Alright, so here we also have the constructor and all the required stuffs are there. We would like to import the package for data source. Let us do that. Alright, let us do some bookkeeping as well. Alright, so now everything looks cool. Fantastic. So finally, now let us code this particular method list users, the code which will like fire the query and do all other stuff related to this particular method list uses. Let's check how we can code this. Alright, so let us code this particular method. I have added a couple of white spaces in here to give you a better view. Let us firstly get rid of the auto generated stub. And now firstly we would require a string entity. The name we will give is a very simple SQL, and it would be nothing but a simple query. Select star from users. Pretty simple. Moving forward, we would also require a list. Into this particular list variable, we would be keeping the list of the user by iterating the result set. Alright, the name would be like list users. Pretty simple. And then we would also require a connection object. The name would be like connection con. Let us quickly add the required package for connection. Alright, so let us add the try catch block, and in fact we will be adding the catch block later down the line, as if now we would be adding the finally block. We will also require the finally block. I will let you know that when and where we would require this finally block. Alright, so inside this particular try block, we will try to connect to the database using the connection object. Let us see. Alright, so getting the connection is pretty simple. We will take help of this data source. Now, as we already know that data source needs to be injected into this particular class bean when we would be making use of it. So don't worry about the data source as of now. Let us quickly use the connection object, and we will say data source dot get connection. Fantastic. Now as soon as we get the connection, this particular method throws an exception. So let us fix this particular issue. We will add the catch block in here. Cool. Fantastic. So now we have also added the catch block. We have also added the finally block, which we will use in a minute. Before we execute this particular SQL query, we would also require a yet another object, which is prepared statement. So we will create a prepare statement based on the SQL. So we will say con dot prepare statement, and we will send in the SQL string in here. Fantastic. And finally, taking help of this object prepare statement, we will execute the query. Alright, so now this particular method will return a result set. So let us add in a result set in here. Result set, maybe rs equals ps dot execute query. So as soon as we do this result set will start containing the result set which is we have got from the database, and definitely we will traverse this result set and we will generate and we will add in all the users in this particular list, which would be no rocket science and no big deal. Now friends, this particular result set is nothing but all the data which we have got from that database table, and the database table has multiple rows. As a result, we would require a loop in here. So I will say result set dot next. So in every iteration we would be fetching a single particular row in the table. Alright, so now next is a method. Moving forward, in here in every iteration we would be adding the information in this particular list. So first of all, we would require a temporary user object. So we will say user temp equals new user, and in the constructor object we would be reading the information. Now friends, as I know that this particular user doesn't have a constructor, so let me navigate to this user.java file. In here we have these three private entities, user ID, name and email address, and we would require a constructor which adds these three information into our object. So let us right click, navigate to source, and we will generate the constructor using field. Let us click on OK, and that's it. Fantastic. So quickly let us navigate to this app DAO. In here we would require this result set, and then we will say get int, and we will give the name of the column ID, which is user underscore ID. Then we would also require name and email, right? So we will say result set dot get string and the name as, I suppose, name, right? And finally we would also require the email address. So we will say result set dot get string, and the name of the column is email, if I am not mistaken. Now friends, these names are very crucial. Let me minimize this and let me open the workbench. Whenever we are getting the result set from the database table, then these values, these names should be exactly the column name. This workbench is taking some time. Let me pause this video for a minute. So let me show you the database in here. So if we check the database, the name in here, the column name in here and the column name in this particular entity for result set should match exactly. Now alternatively, you can also do one thing. In place of the name, we can also give the index ID, which would be 0 for the first column, 1 for this name, and 2 for email address, which is also good. No issues with that. But if you are making use of name, then it should exactly match the name of the column. So saying that, let me minimize this. Once we have this temporary object, we would be adding this temp object into our list. So we will simply say list user dot add temp. So now we will simply say list users dot add, and we will add in the temp variable in here, and as a result, in every iteration a new element in the list would be added, and we need to also initialize the variable. Everything seems good till now. Alright, so we are almost there. Let us quickly close the result set. We will also close the prepare statement object, and then we would be returning the list of users. So it would be like list of users. Now friends, this is important to close these objects before the return statement, else the control will not reach there. Alright, so there is one more thing which is really important as well, that if there is some kind of exception occurred in the try block, then definitely we need to return something in the catch block as well. That is the reason why we would be returning null from this particular method, and that will symbolize that there is some kind of issue, and we will be also printing the stack trace on the console. So everything looks good. And finally, we need to also code the finally block. Now in order to save some time, I have already coded the finally block, and here is the code, and there is some kind of error in here. Oh my gosh, we have not initialized the connection object. Let us real quick do it. So we will say connection equals null. Alright, let me check whether I have did everything correct or not. Oh my gosh, again there is some silly mistake in here. This is pretty silly. In fact, in here we need to initialize the list with a array list, not with null. So let me quickly fix the error, and always remember my mistakes and don't repeat it in your real life. These kind of things are really very usual and common. Alright, so everything looks cool, and finally we will also import the required package. Fantastic. So no error, no warnings, everything is fantastic. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day and take care.